Now, for those of us who've moved to Wales from elsewhere, there were so many reasons for doing so. Top of the list, of course, was the sheer beauty of the country. And I count myself hugely lucky that my job, my writing, my broadcasting has taken me around the whole of Wales, Avon i Wanwyn, from Deeside to St David's. It's had me sailing around the entire coast, not very happily, I've got to say, flying high above the mountains and burrowing deep underground. And do you know what? There is not a duff bit of Wales anywhere. Small but perfectly formed could well be our national motto. But to see Wales just as a magnificent physical feast is to see but a fraction of the whole picture. For someone as nosy as me, Parker by name and all that, there was no purer pleasure than rocking up in a small village, a blustery resort, or a gnarled old market town, and trying to unpick its identity and make some sense of it. I quickly learned that the best way of doing that was simply by talking to people. Almost anyone, in fact. I've travelled in and written about many places all over the world, but it soon became obvious that there was something quite different in Wales, namely the profound sense of place, that old milltir sgwâr thing, hardwired into the Welsh psyche. From the lady serving tea in a steamy windowed cafe to the queue of folk at the bus stop, everybody I spoke to had it and was willing to share it. And this is when it got really exciting for me, because in those countless conversations, I discovered something truly revolutionary for someone who'd grown up slap in the middle of Margaret Thatcher's Middle England in the 1980s. Back there, she was the great political pin-up. But here in Wales, I met no one with a single good word to say about her. It was obvious there was a wholly different political culture on this side of the border. And the more I got to know Wales, the more this fundamental difference became just as appealing as the country's magnificent scenery. And the more I learned about the history of Wales, the more I came to realise that this is no recent phenomenon, a different kind of politics, one that's rooted deep in community and equality, is the Welsh way, and it always has been. It's there in the pioneering Valleys health schemes that formed the bedrock of the NHS. There too in the heroic struggles just down the road of the North Wales Quarrymen's Union, or the Chartists right throughout the whole of Wales. In Welsh solidarity that has been central to every global struggle, from the American and Spanish Civil Wars to the women's peace camps of the 1980s. And that is why I'm here today as a Plaid Cymru candidate. These values of equality and community, the values that thrilled me as an outsider to see still so strong in Wales, well, they're under attack as never before. Battles we thought were long won for dignity and a decent wage, for the NHS and a free education. We're having to fight those battles once again, and this time against a far more insidious enemy. The social fabric of our land is being stretched to breaking point, as are all too many of our citizens. I will not accept as inevitable that we must, bit by bit and cut by cut, lose the things that make us a civilised society. These last 5 years have seen the gap getting ever wider, and the consequences, well, they're there for all of us to see in every part of Wales. Services crumbling, increased isolation and insecurity, worsening physical and mental health, brutal demonisation of others, and the consequent rise of extremism. Inequality creates the ugliest of societies. Countless studies show us that what makes the most successful societies is not the absolute level of wealth, but the way in which it is distributed. The happiest, healthiest, most engaged and most productive nations are the ones where the gap between those at the top and those at the bottom is narrowest. Mind the gap. That should be the driving principle of anyone in politics. And yet, in the UK, for 37 consecutive years now, that gap has yawned wider and wider. It's no surprise, perhaps, that it's grown so much under Conservative governments. We sort of expect that of them. But it's accelerated too under Labour, massively so, and now in coalition under the Lib Dems as well. Measured by any statistics, the UK is now one of the least equal of any of the Western countries. The USA, of course, leads the pack, but we are galloping fast in their direction. The richest 1% of the UK's population are trousering nearly 20% of our wealth. They are careering out of control, and none of the big London parties is doing anything to stop them. And when the super rich pull away from the rest of society, history shows us that the results are always catastrophic. And make no mistake, they are pulling away ever further from the rest of us, cocooning themselves with privilege. They don't use the NHS or state education or public transport, so why should they give a toss about them? Well, perhaps that wouldn't matter so much if only they weren't the very same people making the decisions for the rest of us. They run our press, our media, our banks, and our big institutions. They are the voices we are always hearing, telling us to get used to less, to pick on those below us in the food chain, rather than those busily filling their boots at the top. The greatest shame is that none of the London parties are challenging them. Just look at them. The Conservative Party, hock deep in the trough, pursuing ideological cuts by their own admission that even Margaret Thatcher thought was too much. The Lib Dems whining ever louder as the election draws nearer, that we were made to do it by a big boy. By a big boy who stole their dinner money. UKIP, who makes so much of their outsider status while being led by a stockbroker who's been an elected MEP for the best part of 20 years. And Labour, the party of PFI and tuition fees, whose gangsterism and egomania made our capital city a laughingstock last week, having already done so much the same for our country. Leanne's absolutely right when she calls them the 4 shades of Westminster grey. I'd also call them, though, the 4 horsemen of the Westminster apocalypse, the grim reapers of a system that is steadily poisoning our society. We cannot and we will not let them get away with it. The need is urgent for creative Welsh answers to the problems of today, and history offers no shortage of these. One of Ceredigon's political heroes was Henry Richard of Tregaron, the great 19th century peacemaker and internationalist. His words of 150 years ago are eerily prescient today. When right-wing liberals sabotaged the 1866 Reform Bill and its plans to widen the franchise, Henry Richard rounded on those in his own party who were prepared, in his words, to sacrifice their professed principles rather than see the representation of the kingdom slip from the grasp of their class. In 2015, I can tell you, conference, we in Ceredigion know all about liberals sacrificing their professed principles to keep their slippery little mitts on power. And in homage to Henry Richard's famous election speech of 2 years later, 1868, I want to stand up for those who feel increasingly disenfranchised as our hard-won democracy gets once again bought and corrupted by the overprivileged few. If elected on May the 7th, I will fight for the people who volunteer in their community, who make their community, who run their papier bro, who organise things as diverse as the local Eisteddfod, the Young Farmers Clubs, and the Ceredigion Arts Trail. I will fight for those of us self-employed in the entrepreneurial cardy tradition, for carers and health workers who go the extra mile and receive no thanks, for undervalued public servants struggling against a tsunami of cuts. More than ever before, and with the battle lines so clearly drawn. We need someone to represent Ceredigion in Parliament rather than being the representative of a broken political class in Ceredigion. And more than ever before, we need to place equality and community at the heart of our politics. Those are the Welsh values that I have come to know and to love, and they are the core values of Plaid Cymru, and all are welcome to join us in the fight. Diolch yn fawr i chi.